Services. I am part of the advisory practice at KPMG and I head the strategy consulting for KPMG in the Lower Gulf. I have also had the fortune of driving KPMG's thought leadership initiative within the food and beverage space in the region. As part of that, we've been working on an annual series on F&B sector. What I'm here to present to you today is the findings from our 2019 GCC Food and Beverage Report, which is yet to be released. It's going to be out in a month's time. These are some of the snippets from the work that we've done, what we have found as part of that. As I was mentioning, this is the fifth in our annual series on the F&B sector, where we have canvassed the views of 2,300 consumers across the region. And we have also had discussions with over 35 operators and stakeholders in the industry who have presence across about 3,500 outlets in the region. I would be happy to take any questions you would have towards the end of the presentation. So let's just get cracking. GCC, as we know, is evolving into a prominent F&B destination with global international brands, international chefs, and a very vibrant F&B scene. Dubai is at the epicenter of the F&B industry in the region. So according to a 2019 MasterCard study, Dubai currently ranks 4th globally in terms of international overnight visitor, and Makkah stands at 13th ranked within that. So clearly, a lot of high tourist inflow and a very vibrant F&B scene. Along with that, a high GDP per capita, which clearly GCC outpaces the region in terms of GDP per capita. So that really sets the scene for its evolution into a F&B market going forward. So let's look at what we see across some of the key markets in the GCC. Starting with UAE, clearly, as I was mentioning, UAE is the front runner when you look at the F&B market in the GCC region. When we look at it from consumer segment, from consumers' perspective, the market is fairly robust. 78% of the consumers we spoke to in the UAE, they have been eating out as much or more compared to last year. 83% of them are also spending as much or more compared to last year. So very clearly, the consumer side of the story is very robust. People are still going out and eating. However, despite the positive consumer sentiment, when operators have found the going to be challenging, and this is not the first year, over the last few years, for F&B operators, for restaurateurs, the going has been challenging, and it's not very different, from what we see this year. More than 50%, more than half of the operators we spoke to in the UAE, they've seen like-for-like decline in their sales. That said, only 13%, which is 1 out of 8 operators, have seen double-digit decline. Now, this number used to be 40% till last year. So, these are perhaps early signs of the market normalizing, the new norm being set, but the base is certainly lower than what it used to be, let's say, in 2015. Interestingly enough, 30% of the operators have seen like-for-like growth in their sales, which suggests that some of the operators at least are reading the market correctly and are recalibrating their strategy to adjust to the new market reality. So that's excellent news, and we hope there is going to be growth coming in the market going forward, which is also reflected in the near-term outlook from the operators. So more than half of the operators that we spoke to expect growth in the next 12 months, which is 2020. There is expectation around growth. Part of this has to do with the change in the approach from the operators, but a good part of that is to do with the Expo 2020. 7 out of 10 operators that we spoke to are optimistic about Expo 2020. They expect Expo 2020 to have a positive impact on their business. 30% of them are looking to directly participate on site with their brands and concepts. As for the remaining who do not have any specific plans at this point, they do expect the spillover effect of Expo 2020 into the main F&B hotspots within the UAE. So all very positive near term in UAE. Medium term also happens to be positive. So again, more than 50% are expecting growth in the near term, in the medium term. But that said, there is a certain section of operators who are kind of wary about what happens, what lies beyond Expo 2020, what lies beyond the mega event. So that is to be seen. So the key concerns from the operators around the market, clearly the evolving geopolitical situation, which has its effect on the consumer sentiment and the spends, and investor confidence is clearly top of their mind. Along with that is the concerns around the increasing competition and the oversupply that's getting created in the market. So clearly some of these things will need to be looked at as we go along. So mixed sentiments from UAE, but a more upbeat sentiment when we look at the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is going through major shifts, as all of us are aware of it. Noteworthy changes are around increased participation of female at workspace, which has its effect on retail and F&B spends, of course. The introduction of driving license for females, and the relaxation, and this is most important from F&B perspective, relaxation of gender segregation at restaurants and cinemas. These are things which will have an impact on the F&B outlook and some of this is going to play out in the coming years. Further to that, Saudi Arabia, as part of Vision 2030, has set aside $64 billion for leisure and entertainment sector. This is definitely going to have a knock-on effect on the F&B segment. It is very positive for the F&B sector. A lot of this optimism, a lot of this is reflected again in terms of what we hear from the consumers. Like UAE, consumers are eating out as much or more in Saudi. So 74% of the consumers are eating out as much or more. Again, 83 as similar to UAE, 83% are spending as much or more in eating out. When we look at the operators and what their businesses has seen in the last 1 year, we see that the message is largely similar, slightly more optimistic picture in Saudi compared to UAE. So 45% have seen like-for-like decline, but then there is 33% operators who have actually seen, so 1 out of 3 operator has seen like-for-like growth in Saudi. The medium-term outlook, and this is where the picture changes between UAE and Saudi. Medium-term outlook, out and out, is bullish. Every operator that we spoke to in Saudi is bullish in the medium term. They expect growth in the Saudi market. So let's look at what's driving this optimism in Saudi, the demand-supply dynamics within Saudi. If you look at Saudi is currently underserved. The retail density in Saudi is very low compared to what we see in UAE. So 177 square meters of retail development for every 1,000 residents. In UAE, it's 844 square meters of development. So huge difference between Saudi and UAE on that front in terms of retail density. If you look at the demand side and the supply side drivers, the demand growth is expected, which is growth in residents and tourist population in Saudi. That growth is expected to outpace the supply growth, which is the growth in the retail supply. So a very good story building up in Saudi. Positive picture there. As part of our report, we have also captured Kuwait and Oman markets. In the interest of time, we are not presenting it, but in a month's time you would have the report available. You can certainly read through it. But a quick snapshot on what we're seeing in Kuwait and Oman. Kuwait largely similar to what we see in UAE, where consumer demand is robust, but operators are challenged in terms of their sales, largely to do with increased competition and oversupply in Kuwait market as well. The picture in Oman market is slightly more optimistic, slightly better. Oman has done slightly better than the other markets. So 4 out of 10 operators in Oman have seen like-for-like sales growth. Oops. I'll just skip these. Now switching gears and talking about what we are seeing in terms of the trends around cuisines and formats. In terms of cuisines, when we look at UAE, and UAE is a market that we have covered consistently over the last 4 years. What we find is the cuisine preferences, the top choices of cuisine in UAE has largely remained consistent. So it's Indian, Italian, and Lebanese food that does well is preferred by the UAE consumer. When we look at the other GCC country, which is Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Oman, however, we find that local GCC cuisine is preferred along with Lebanese and Levantine cuisine. If you look at it, it's largely reflective of the demographic mix of these markets. Each of these countries, you see the demographic mix, it's largely reflective of that. When we look at the formats, and this is feedback coming from the operators, clearly QSR and fast casual concepts are doing well because we have seen a rise in value-seeking consumer today. That is what is driving the performance for QSR and fast casual and their popularity. It's also been aided by the growth in delivery, and QSR food goes really well with delivery, and delivery has been a key growth engine for a lot of QSR concepts in the market. Cafe segment is slightly overcrowded, but still continues to gain popularity on the back of young and affluent population that like to socialize. They like the cafe setting to socialize. So that's continued to remain popular. Specialty coffee and tea concepts are also gaining popularity. The formats that have been affected more are really casual dining and premium dining segments. Casual dining has been affected by the shift towards QSR and fast casual concepts. That said, there are still operators who do well because they've been able to, as I mentioned earlier, recalibrate their strategy. They've been able to offer better value propositions, so they are operators who do well within the casual dining segment. But by and large, casual dining has been affected. Premium dining, where the effect has been felt the most. This is where businesses, operators have seen the maximum challenge, both in terms of the number of transactions or footfalls that they were getting, as well as in terms of the average ticket size. So this is a segment that continues to remain affected. Again, within this segment, there are exceptions, there are concepts that continue to grow in spite of whatever else is happening in the market. Let's look at some of the insights from consumers' perspective around the frequency of eating out, the spends that they have across these markets. So very clearly, UAE is leading the pack in the GCC when it comes to dining out as well as ordering in. The average UAE consumer eats out 6 times a month and orders in at least 5 times or over 5 times a month. The other GCC countries compare well when it comes to dining out, but they are still lagging behind when it comes to ordering in. So the closest a country comes to is Kuwait, where we've seen consumers are ordering in almost 5 times a month, but UAE clearly leads the pack there. When it comes to the average spend per consumer, I think it's very evident that dining out has a higher average spend versus ordering in. UAE leads when it comes to the average spend on dining out across the countries, but Kuwait leads when it comes to the spend on ordering in. So, what does the typical GCC consumer look like? How do they behave? So they prefer to head out more than order in. So they are 2 times more likely to dine out than order in. They seek quality and value. So more than 50% of the consumer across the region said that they look for quality of food and service when they choose a restaurant. They respond to word of mouth. So about 30% of the consumers said that they will be influenced, their dining choices would be driven by the feedback that they get from others. And the average GCC F&B consumer is also more health conscious. More than 50% of consumers said to us that they will eat healthy during the week and they could perhaps indulge over the weekend, but by and large, a shift towards healthy eating. The last bit is around the whole story around delivery and what we see. I think this is by far the brightest spot within the F&B scene across the GCC. Delivery has seen growth. 86% of the operators that we spoke to are already listed on various food apps. They have their presence within the delivery space. 60% of the consumers, and again this is a growing trend we have seen over the years, 60% of the consumers are actually using food apps to order food. There are transactions happening on food app, and 60% of the consumers said that they are part of that. Not surprising then, 72% of the operators that we spoke to have seen like-for-like growth in their delivery business, which automatically means that the share of delivery to their overall business has been on the rise, has been increasing. A trend connected to this is around delivery kitchen, where most of the operators, 7 out of 10 operators see delivery kitchen having potential for the future. Call it dark kitchen, cloud kitchen, managed kitchen. These concepts are there and operators are adapting to that. There are a number of operators who are already present there. So very quick summary on what we discussed here. So mixed flavor across the region. Saudi story is quite upbeat. Other markets have an interesting set of challenges and opportunities. QSR and fast casual are doing really well in the market, while other concepts still have their set of challenges. Cuisine choices are reflective of the demographic make of the markets. UAE and Kuwait lead the pack when it comes to average spend on dining out and ordering in respectively. And Deliverution, as we call it, delivery-led revolution, is really a growth area for most of the operators. Thanks a lot. This is really it from our side. In case you have any questions, happy to take that.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, there's always opportunities around the room to catch up and network a little bit and ask your questions to our speakers. Thank you very much to Mr. Vikrant Rohatgi there, who's Director of Global Strategy Group, KPMG. The Middle East, Asia, Africa and Europe carry a strong legacy of trade. They have come a long